I've just printed the entire manuscript of my book, Broken Bells, and this is the first time I'm seeing this in printed version. And my wife had this amazing idea to give me these rings here, so our 3-hole punch binder can basically be used to punch it and then just stick all this wad of paper together. So the thing is, it's sometimes easier to edit text on paper rather than looking at a screen all the time. And this is, as I said, this is the first time after a bit of a break that I'm picking this back up, and I hope it's going to be interesting. It's one of those things. I've been away from the project for a while, but I've been trying to, well, while I was writing, I think what I noticed is that the premise for me needs to change. So at first it was supposed to be an account of what I've experienced while I had cancer and how the treatment went and all that. And in the middle, just before the big finale, if you will, I stopped because I thought, well, that's just kind of, there's something missing here. And what was missing is the kind of a new spin on the whole project, which is, how did I survive? So not, yeah, I got Keytruda, thanks, I'm okay again. That would be, that's not really, I don't think that's the full story. That is part of the story, and of course that'll go in. But the real story is, and I got this from many people over the years, is that my attitude, my positivity, my interest in the disease, and also the interest in the fact that I wanted to get rid of it and I wanted to survive it. I think those are very important aspects. And while I've touched on the divine energy, if you will, that kind of got me through the process and got me here to Miami, I think I want to make a bigger bow there and explain how following that sort of intuition, gut feeling, energy, whatever you want to call it, has been part of my life for a while. And whenever I followed it and really focused on it, it has resulted in amazing things. And I think that is one thing I just want to make sure it goes in the book. And I don't really know where I am with it right now. So it is just about 60,000 words. 40,000, roughly 40,000 of it is the actual manuscript, and then another, well, actually it's kind of 50-50. 50% of it is the actual book, and the other 50% is the writing diary, so things that I thought of while I was there, warm-up exercises and all that. So that is also printed out. I thought maybe that'll be useful to revisit that, and so I was going to do that this morning, but of course printing took way longer than I had anticipated. So I've got my own coffee now. I'm going to grab my bike and I'm going to sit at Morris Gibb Park with a big pencil and a highlighter, and I'm gonna read through the whole thing, and I'll see what it's like, how it feels, and of course make some revisions and notes for myself so that I know what needs to be changed, what needs to be amended, and then we'll take it from there. I will let you know how it went at the end of this. So it's the next day, and I did in fact print all this out yesterday and did have a chance to read it, well, half of it about, or thereabouts, and I was very pleasantly surprised, I must say. I was very pleased with what I read. I've been away from the project for about 2 months or 3 months maybe, and it's about time that I bring it to a close. And look at how thick it is. This is quite impressive. I was very pleased to read that. So half of it is the writing diary and the other half is the actual stuff that I've written for the book. But there are things, items, bits and bobs in the writing diary that I can bring into the book. So that's very interesting to see as well. My first impression really after reading the first couple of chapters was, this is dynamite. So I was really pleased about it, because sometimes you write things, you don't reread them, and I've not really reread any of the footage or of the text really, and you don't really know what it is that's there. So that's where printing something like this out and having a read yourself in a coffee shop with a big marker pen and another pen to write corrections on the sides is very important. So that's what I've done so far, and I will continue doing that today. I'm also updating the things I found that need to be corrected, like simple spelling mistakes or rephrases that need to happen. I'm doing that now on another document, so I'm creating a second version of it. so that this one is kind of frozen as it is, and then we have a second version that is now getting all the corrections. But then, of course, there's another process in which I'm going to reassemble things. I think that's a good word for it. Reassemble things, perhaps into different order, because one thing that I have noticed while I was reading it is that I really like the style in which it is presented, the type of writing style, but sometimes too much is too much. So what I've noticed is that when I read a long section about hospital stays and cancers and diagnosis and medical stuff, then that is kind of overwhelming, and there comes a point where you just want to put this away and go, yeah, I'm going to kind of just do something else now. That's fun, and it's just too depressing and tough. It's just tough stuff to read. So one of my great talents, I know, is that I can just swerve away with an anecdote of something else. And those things are kind of part of the writing diary. So there's many places that just put me as a person into the context of where this cancer thing happened. And I think it would be a nice idea to interchange those things so that we basically have two threads. The main thread is the anything from the beginning of 2016 to the beginning of 2018. And in like every other chapter, basically, I just tell an anecdote that explains more about my character and how I've come to be here, and things like where you're from. That's a great introduction, and it kind of rounds off my character, or the experience that I had with hospitals before I started having this hospital experience. And many of these things, like I wasn't sleeping very well last night, and I kept coming up with many of these things that I can tell that'll just lighten the mood a little bit. And it also then means I have one main thread, and then I have several sub threads that I can just chuck in the middle, and that'll just make for a much nicer reading experience. So in order to accomplish that, I've decided it is not a good idea to combine everything in a large document right away. So it goes back to the coding analogy that I keep thinking of, that we don't really code complex code. Like WordPress, for example, is a massive PHP script, but it's not in a single file. That would be a nightmare. No one would, except for a computer, would be able to get work on that. Like, an old basic program on a Commodore computer, that was all one file, it was all one long thing. But as soon as something becomes longer than 2 or 3 screen sizes for code, that's really, really difficult to manage and maintain. So with documents about 2,000-3,000 words in length, that's kind of manageable, but that's kind of the maximum that you can really comfortably go through in a single document. So inside Storyist, I'm going to do it so that each of these subsections that I'm talking about, each chapter, each subsection, each story snippet, if you will become a separate document for now. And then I will assemble it into a larger document. And then if I need to rearrange, and then that's fairly easy to do thanks to these tools that we have on the side there. But that is a bit of work. And I'm going to start doing that again today. My wife's back at work. She wasn't feeling very well. We had a German dish from a tin yesterday called Knip, and it was maybe a little bit much. Luckily, my stomach was happy with it. My guts were happy with it. But then, they're stapled together, so it's one of those things. Anyway, so I'm going to get on now and see what other updates I have going forward, perhaps when we start looking at version 0.2. But just a note to myself, final note to myself here, if printing this out, even though it was a lot of work, was a magical thing to do, and seeing this not only in black and white writing, but also having something like a massive wad of paper that I can write and do markings on, that was very much worth the hassle and the effort and the money that it cost me. And note to self, book rings, very exciting. I don't know why my wife had these, but Office Depot sell them, and that is a great idea to just use them without a binder. A wad of paper sticks together like that. Very cool. One other note to myself here, you can just about see it, stabilizing these hole punches on the front and the back works really well with with clear tape. So no need to buy a sheet of Mylar to put it on the top. That makes it all a little bit more sturdy, of course, but at the same time, for a draft manuscript that needs a lot of work, it's not really necessary. So, save yourself a tenner, don't buy that. And reutilize these rings, and when another version comes out, just chuck all this in a big folder so I can keep the process kind of going. It'd be quite nice. Well, more news as it breaks.